All right. So thank you very much for joining this very, very interesting and something that's very close to my heart in terms of our discussions. And so I was asked to give a few remarks to kick off today's session. And this is on sustainability and especially for the water and sanitation sector. So this is something, like I said, when I was in operations, having a project that is developed and not having the amount of resources that's spent afterwards to make it sustainable, it's something that really makes you feel like a developing partner to have suffered or to have failed in some way. Now that I sit in strategy and policy and we're looking at it from the results side and getting a bigger picture from our independent evaluations department and their evaluation of completed projects that ADB has done, you can definitely see a broader picture of the sector as a whole and how it's falling behind in terms of the sustainability aspect, right? And so IED look at sustainability by looking through how much O&M support is actually given, how much counterpart financing is given by the government, and so I think, or even on things like tariffs. And so these are all challenging aspects for the water and sanitation sector that we all know as a common threat. So I think, as the sector group, we have been looking at different ways of addressing this issue. And from SBD's side, for the sustainability issue, we have developed a sustainability working group in which we have been picking at a lot of your brains about how to address this issue from a short-term perspective as well as from a long-term perspective. And so from things like project implementation and administrative support to the conceptualization and the procurement plans and developing different methodologies and instruments that we can use to ensure that O&M is incorporated into the overall framework for our investments. I think this is something that it's really central to the sector, but also central to the theme that we're covering today. So I'm really looking forward to hear more from Stefan and the team. And I know that they have been really working really diligently to come up with different solutions that are workable under the ADB framework. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor to Stefan for this session. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lou, for this nice introduction, and I'm really happy to follow up, and I will explain more in detail what is this operation and maintenance contract template initiative. So first, I would like to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Stéphane Bessadi. I'm senior procurement specialist in ADB, and I have a background as Lou in the water sector, a few years of operation in the water sector in the private sector. So I will introduce the panel we have today. We were very happy to regroup a very diverse panel. So we will have with us today Yujia Shen, who is working for GWI. She's the Asian representative. We have Srinivasan, who will introduce himself more in detail, but who is working in financial management department within ADB. We have Thiago Ribeiro, who is working for SUD and who is based in Timor-Leste. So we will also give a very grounded perspective on these operation and maintenance issues. And we have Mr. Luo, who is working for Beijing Group, a private sector company, and who will give also interesting perspective on this operation and maintenance aspect in PRC. So I would like to. So we'll have 4 presentation. We'll try to really keep the time to have time for questions. And really, it's very important for us to have feedback from the audience. And I will start now to deep more in detail in the presentation. First slide, please. So this initiative was starting by some people in the Asian Development Bank. So in continuation, as Lou explained, of the sustainability working groups that started a few years ago. To see how to improve project sustainability, and more especially in the water and wastewater sector, because there are key sustainability issues that were highlighted by few external and internal reports within ADB, highlighting that water and wastewater projects lack sustainability on the long term, because it was identified that executing agencies, that water utilities in charge, lack the necessary skills to operate and maintain properly the infrastructure built. So as you may know, water and wastewater operation is very diverse. Is depending if you work in treatment, depending if you work in distribution, depending if you work in customer service, depending if you work in wastewater, in water, you have very diverse aspects, and it's very, very technical, and it's required also managerial skills. So really the target of this initiative was to first better secure the assets financed by ADB, but also better understand the infrastructure to be built. Because very often, we analyze that if you don't understand well the background and the infrastructure that are in place, it's very difficult also to design the new infrastructure. Also, in a water scarcity context, in the climate change context, we analyze that it's very important to improve the way operation and maintenance is developed, especially regarding, for example, energy aspects, and also regarding water scarcity aspects. For example, non-revenue water is a key aspect of operation and maintenance, and it needs to be decreased quite generally in Asia, because it's one of the key issues in the water sector. There are a lot of water losses in the network. Next slide, please. So the expected outcome was really, as I said, so to optimize the scarce water resource operation, but also to transfer technology and knowledge to the executing agency, because water and wastewater is also having more and more technology, more and more digitalization. It's a key topic that will be developed this week in the forum. So when you decide to put more digital tools in your water and wastewater system, you need also to improve the level of operation. So you have an example on this screen. You can see a SCADA, for example, with all the assets, levels and KPI related and that are linked to the screen. You can see that to understand and operate such a system, you need to be skilled. You need to be you need to have the knowledge for that. So it's really what we want to achieve with this initiative. can you show the slide again, please? Yes, thank you. So this is the expected outcome. And next slide, please. No, the one before, please. Okay, yes. So this is the one after, please. Okay, so you can see here the usual infrastructure steps of an infrastructure project, and you see that usually development banks and other organizations focus more on the design of the infrastructure and also on how the infrastructure will be implemented, but not necessarily too much on the operation and maintenance period. So you have, of course, what we call the defect notification period, where you make sure that the infrastructure is reaching its goals. And you have this time to make sure that the infrastructure was designed properly. But when the infrastructure is really put in operation, we don't necessarily have the necessary contract template for that. So it's what we identified, and we said, of course, there are a lot of aspects, and as Srinivasan will explain, you have some financial sustainability aspect, you have a lot of diverse aspects. Can you hear me? Okay, and you have a different aspect to address, but one of the key aspects is the operation and maintenance with a proper contract template. So it's what we wanted to develop with this group. And next slide, please. So as you can see, we decided to develop three different templates. First, a design and build with an operation and maintenance phase. So using a gold book, which was already developed a few years ago as a design, build, and operate contract templates. It's already available within ADB, but we fine-tuned it to have a shorter period of operation in this case. We had a second case also for new infrastructure, what we call greenfield infrastructure. So with build and O&M, so using what we call a red book. So in the FIDIC vocabulary, it's called a red book. And then we decided also to build a standalone O&M contract template when the new infrastructure is not yet built and the executing agency or the government doesn't know yet what he wants to achieve. So to give him the time to operate, to better understand what are the key issues, and then to have a design phase and to develop the new infrastructure. So we have also a fourth case that will be addressed later in cooperation with FIDIC, which is also developing and addressing operation and maintenance aspects in the next future. Next slide, please. So we decided to develop an innovative approach with we hired technical experts and also contractual experts. We decided really to benchmark good practice and to make sure of what was existing on the ground. And we had three key steps. So first, the head of terms. Second, the procurement template and guidelines. And after, we have also a dissemination part, because we think, as today, is very important to share and to make sure that we have a close cooperation with the private sector on that. So we had already a private sector seminar, and I will give you the key highlights, and Yuja will speak also more in detail about that. Next slide, please. So as you may see, we have three key steps in this initiative. First, inception phase that was done in the first trimester. The second is a head of term that is was achieved in the second quarter, and that is already done. And now we'll release the final O&M template, and we'll have more detailed presentation with other MDBs and with the private sector, and with also our government and organization to make sure that there is a good understanding of this template. And we have already some of our clients which are interested, as in India, to use these templates to address more specially operation and maintenance issues to improve non-revenue water, as I mentioned in the introduction. Next slide, please. So you have here some example of the private sector workshop we developed. So we had a workshop with a lot of private sector firms, so the key actors in the water and wastewater fields. We sent a questionnaire and we analyzed their answer to really adjust and adapt this operation and maintenance template according to the market needs. So it's very important for us to put on the market a product which is adapted to the needs. We wanted also to validate the different hypotheses, and I will show you now what were the key learnings of this workshop. Next slide, please. So first, we were able to confirm that there is a strong interest from the private sector, and Yuja may develop more in detail about that. We found also that there is no silver bullet template, but a modular form which has to be adapted because there are a lot of cases according the country, according the city, according the situation, according the capacity, also the local capacity. So it's really a template that has modular aspects and that is able to adapt to the exact situation, depending if you are working, for example, in the Pacific, or if you are working in PRC, as Mr. Luo will explain, or in Timor-Leste, as Thiago will explain. We also found that we need to address water distribution and water production separately because they are really different business. And also that we are developing specific KPI to address sustainability, because we find also that our O&M may not be sustainable. So you need to find the right KPI to make sure that this operation and maintenance phase will be sustainable. We found also that additional action are needed, and that's why, and it's what my colleague Srinivasan will present. You need also to put enablers to develop a proper and suitable operation and maintenance. So you may see we had 57 respondents and 32 participants in this workshop from key water and wastewater utilities. So it was really interesting exchange. Next slide, please. I'm done for this introduction and this part of the presentation. So I will now leave the floor to Yuja, who will give us some interesting and more general aspect about operation and maintenance in Asia and the Pacific. I really look forward your questions and comment on this initiative. That's really why we are having these sessions today. So please don't be shy. Don't hesitate to ask questions, and we'll have at the end of the workshop Q&A to be able to answer as the best we can. Thank you very much, and Yuja, please.
Thank you, Stephen. So I will share my screen. Yeah, so yeah, everyone can see my screen now. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm Yuja. I'm the Asia editor at Global Water Intelligence. So we are a research, event, and consulting company that provides market-leading analysis to the international water sector. So today I'm going to share with you what's the current stage of operation and maintenance contract in Asia. So I will first have a regional overview and then zoom in on 3 important markets: India, China, and Southeast Asia. So In general, we can see that the private operations market in Asia is relatively small, but it's growing because of increasing pressure on utility KPIs and also increasing focus on the sustainability of infrastructure. And how small is that? So we can see the chart here, which is showing the adoption of various models in the region. And we can see it covers like 3 scenarios. The first, which is shown as the pink color here, which is the O&M service embedded into contracts with private financing. So that is like concession contracts and BOTs, build, operation, transfer, and TOTs. So that involves financing, build, and operate. And then the blue color here, which is showing the O&M service coupled with EPC and DB work. So that's like DBO contracts and EPCO contracts. And the green color here, which is showing the standalone O&M contracts. And then we can see that, so in 2022, according to our research, the total operating expenditure in the region's water and wastewater sector is $138 billion. And so that includes recurring costs to operate the facilities, including like labor cost, electricity, and chemicals. And of that 138 billion, we can see that only 6% of that is for contracts involving the private operators. And that means like a lot of the facilities are still run by the public sector. And of that 6%, which is average for the region, and we can see that it varies from country to country. So for China and India, the number is quite similar. So it's close to 9% and 10%, but the adoption of different models is different. And for Southeast Asia, so 34% of that expenditure is for private operations contract. Because like, so different markets has different economic development, and the adoption of various models also depends a lot on the local government's financial capability. And so we will see in details in the next 3 slides. So let's look at India first. So for India, it's the most established private operation market in the developing Asian countries. And EPC and O&M contracts is the most dominant procurement model for municipal water and wastewater projects. Why is that? So on one hand, so the public sector often lacks operation capacity. So for them, it's quite challenging for them to hire skilled laborers. And on the other hand, so they are facing increasing pressure on utility performance. That's why they tend to outsource their operation to the private operators. And also because the technology barrier to operate the facilities is not very high. So there are over 100 local companies competing in the market. So this would result in very low O&M price. And in some extreme cases, that's even lower than the in-house cost to run the plant. So we can see that this market is quite established. And then so there are 2 major national programs which offer opportunities to the international private operators. So for the water sector, it's 24/7 water supply. So that's a performance-based contracting structure. And for the wastewater side, so they have a program named One City, One Operator. So this model is adopted in 2018. And that means that to operate the whole city's sewage infrastructure to one private operator. And in terms of O&M phase duration, so we did an analysis to over like 300 O&M type of contracts in India. And then we found that 5 to years operation duration is the most common. Also like 2 to 5 years, which is shown green here, is also quite common. And then we can see that projects over 10 years is less common. Why is that? We often think that the longer the operation period, it's better to leverage the private sector's expertise and technology. But also the longer the operation period, it also imposes higher risk to the private sector. Also, India is a very fast growing country. And then after 10 years, the contract scope often expanded. So that's why private operators often prefer contracts within 10 years. And in terms of the project scope, so we can see that, so the plant alone, so that means like a water treatment plant or wastewater treatment plant outsource is the most common. And the pipeline projects involving pipelines are not very common, except those national programs like the 24/7 water supply and then the wastewater side, because the pipelines is often more involves like the service to the end users, and it's more politically sensitive. And then also because the pipelines are all buried underground, so it's quite difficult to see what's the operation status, which is more risky. So that's for India. So we can see that for this market, the wide adoption of outsourced operation contract is quite common. And then now let's move to China. So this is another important market in the region. So similar like India, so the region is also facing increasing pressure on utility KPIs, such as water quality, wastewater collection and treatment. And then in addition, because the development of infrastructure of some financing tools based on existing assets, such as REITs, which is real estate infrastructure trust. So so people are also focusing more on the operation side, because if you operate the plant well, then it means that you can better leverage those financing instruments to raise funds. That's why we are also seeing more adoption of O&M contracts in the country. And unlike India, so the adoption of model is quite different. So PPP, so that means like a contract involving private financing is the most dominant in China. And then we can see this chart here, which is showing the different stages of the Chinese market. And we can see that since 2015, so the major procurement model is PPPs for municipal projects. But since 2018, because the government starts to crack down on those contracts to reduce the local government debts, also because the public sector financing cost is much lower than the private financing cost. That's why a lot of PPPs are either canceled or converted into EPC contracts. And then since the start of 2020, because it's the end of the 13th five-year plan, and then the utilities are facing pressure to hit the target. So we can so EPC plus O&M contracts is increasingly adopted in the market, especially in rural areas with poor infrastructure and also have a shortage of skilled labor. And then also the industry also believe that with a lot of infrastructure has been built in the country in a rush, and then so package the operations of bundled assets will also start to emerge. So that's for China. And then now let's move to Southeast Asia. So for Southeast Asia, it's different from India and China. Those two are more established markets, but for Southeast Asia, so they have more prominent financing needs, and then the infrastructure is also far lagging behind. So for those for this area, especially like country like Vietnam, Indonesia, or Cambodia, so private operation and maintenance contract without private financing needs is quite rare, except for DBO type of contracts, which is design, build, and operate, which are often funded by international funding agencies. Actually, since the 2010s, the international funding agencies such as the ADB and the World Bank, they have tried to encourage the O&M contracts to be embedded into long-term contracts. And then I have also piloted quite different models in the region. So we can see the chart here, which is showing 3 different examples. And so we can see that, so the World Bank in 2009, they started a performance-based non-revenue water reduction project in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And so that's a 5-year contract for 5-year operation and maintenance contract to reduce the non-revenue water. Also, the final performance, so the final outcome outperformed the original target. this type of contract is not replicated anymore in the region. Why is that? So this is because of the challenges of this type of contracts, which is also the common challenges in O&M type of contracts. So on one hand, so the private operators, it's difficult for them to know what's the baseline, yes, because especially for those brownfield projects. And then secondly, it depends also depends on how much the private sector can control. Because non-revenue water is a target, but it depends on a lot of factors, such as the distribution pipelines and also the metering accuracy and then the collection rates. So a lot of those are not under the private sector's control in this type of contracts. And then thirdly, it's also for those performance-based contracts, it also only works like when the benefit sharing of this type of contracts is much larger than the investment you need to make. So that's why the challenges has hindered the development of this type of contracts in the region. So that's why people are also trying different innovations and then to further promote this type of contract. So we can see that in 2019, so the Japan International Cooperation Agency, they have started a program which is named the Grant with Right to Operation and Maintenance. And under this program, so they have signed the first project in Cambodia in this year. So under this type of contract, so the funding agency, JCA, would provide a grant for the client to build the plants. But the client or the utility need to outsource its operations to private operators in order to improve the infrastructure sustainability. So they have signed this. So for this contract example, so they have like a 10-year operation period to improve the operation efficiency. So we can see that. So we do have like challenges here, but that's why we are here, and then we are discussing different like innovations such as the ADB's contracting guidelines. And then we believe that with the increasing focus of infrastructure sustainability, O&M or private like O&M would be increasing seen in the region. Yeah, so that's all for my presentation. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yuja.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Yuja. Yes. So I will accept if Lou wants to say a few words. I will introduce the next speaker. So Srini, I let you introduce yourself, and we'll now move on the key enabler for the operation and maintenance phase, that is the financial sustainability. So Srini, I let you introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you may be connecting from. I am Srinivasan Janardhanam, Principal Financial Management Specialist in the Public Financial Management Division of ADB. One of my core aspects or TOR has been looking at the financial sustainability of the projects that ADB designs and implements. Next slide, please. Operations and maintenance is a corporate financial issue because it is not just a contracting issue, because what we need is money. And ADB projects on their own cannot be standalone sustainable because they are part of a network. If the network operator is not sustainable financially, then it is very doubtful if the ADB project on its own can be considered or designed to be sustainable without the overall operator being successful. There are some leading indicators which, when we look at the financial statements and the overall performance, they will come to light. Some of the examples are lack of financial and institutional capacity to ensure O&M. And there is even lack of clarity on which entity is responsible for O&M. Often it is a case that one entity constructs the network or project and then it is handed over for operation and maintenance to another unit. But this is not very clear what is being handed over and what are the TOR for that. And there is no concrete action plan for funding the operations and maintenance requirements if the tariff or the user charges or the collection from the users is below the need. This is because often the budget allocation or cost recovery mechanism is ill-defined or inadequate. Next. A snapshot. I am just presenting a very simple snapshot of ADB's portfolio. We introduce financial covenants in our projects, which are like improved collection efficiency, reduced accounts receivable, a positive operating ratio, that is operating expenditure as a percentage of operating revenue is below 100%. A prudent debt to equity ratio, a good debt service coverage ratio or similar ratio. These are all various kinds of financial covenants which are incorporated into different projects. For the financial year ending in 2020, a quick review showed that only 54% of the active portfolio complied with these covenants. 38% did not comply and 8% complied partially. That is, supposing they had 4 covenants, maybe they complied with 2 and could not comply with 2. So that is partial compliance. Next slide, please. We can dig a little deeper into the indicators of weak sustainability. If you look at the financial statements, we will find that there is a high dependence on the annual government budget or subsidy. That is, there is no predictability about the funding, and it is all dependent upon the amount that will be allocated by the government in its annual budget. Secondly, we will find that there is no cost recovery mechanism from users for funding even O&M, let alone capital cost. And there are political economy reasons which impede timely tariff increases. Tariffs are set, but they do not change even with reference to inflation and certainly not with reference to changes in costs. And then poor financial health of the utility. They do not have a good operating ratio. Their operating expenses actually exceed the operating revenues. They are unable to connect the accounts receivable, which increase in a number of days. Ideally, accounts receivable should be somewhere between 30 to 90 days. But we have come across cases where these have gone to 730 days or even over 1,000 days. And correspondingly, the number of days of accounts payable also go up. So it's a kind of a balancing thing. If you can't collect, you can't pay. And they are also unable to service their debt, which puts the overall fiscal health of the utility into a very weak situation. And this is coupled with a situation where the government does not provide adequate autonomy to the utility, which it controls its operations, its staffing, its budget, everything is under the control of the government. The utility does not have a good commercial orientation. It is compelled to, or it provides services at no cost or below cost. There is no metering, or even if meters are failed, they are not replaced on time. Collection of bills is not a priority, and the non-revenue water is not managed efficiently. And the umbrella point is always regulation. Tariff is set through regulation. So either we have weak regulators or sometimes there is no regulator and the government itself sets the tariff. These are all indicators of weak sustainability. Next slide, please. ADB's strategy has been and continues to be to consider better products such as policy-based loans or result-based loans to improve the sector financial position as a whole rather than go at it project by project. This is to be supplemented by sound diagnostics of the financial position of each executing agency, a continued policy dialogue with the government, the regulators, and the agencies, and considering that many of the utilities are in a very weak fiscal position, develop financial restructuring plans for strengthening the overall fiscal capacity of the utilities. And these financial restructuring plans should be incorporated as financial covenants and financial management action plans in our projects for continuous monitoring and implementation. With this combination of activities, it is ADB's intent to improve the overall fiscal position of the water utilities. It's quite a complex and difficult task. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Srini, for this very interesting perspective and key enablers on financial sustainability. So please send your question on so on Yujia, my presentation, Yujia presentation, and Srini presentation so far in the chat box, so we can start to we started to see some of them. Very interesting question. Thank you. Now we would like so to give the floor to practical project and practical context example. Operation and maintenance aspects have been also developed further. So I would like to give the floor to my colleague Thiago Ribeiro, who will introduce himself and who is now speaking from Timor-Leste resident mission. Thank you very much, Thiago. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stefan. My name is Thiago Ribeiro. I'm an urban development specialist in the Southeast Asia Department of ADB, outposted to the Timor-Leste resident mission since 2017 and working directly with the government on the water sector. For today's presentation, we will share our experience with an O&M contract under one of the projects that ADB implemented in Timor. So we will provide a short project background, how it was, the challenge and to setting up a 2-year operation and maintenance contract, the pathway, and the results from this contract. Next slide, please. So the project included a $5 million civil works contract, mainly to build 16 kilometers of transmission pipes, approximately 26 kilometers of the distribution network, three reservoirs, 2 intakes, and 1 infiltration gallery that resulted in more than 1,000 household connections in this secondary city in Timor-Leste called Manatutu. Attached to the civil works contract, there was also a 2-year O&M contract with a total amount of $2 million. Next slide, please. Water supply in Timor-Leste is highly intermittent. The paradigm of intermittent supply is ingrained in the Timor-Leste water sector culture. The general management approach to address intermittent supply is to increase the supply of water. This approach has proven to be unsuccessful since the intermittent supply is largely operation and maintenance and community awareness issue. At institutional level, the water sector used to be under direct state administration, not providing an incentive for staff to perform well. Salaries were low and most customers not charged for water supply, resulting in the lack of financing for operation and maintenance, particularly in secondary cities. Next slide, please. The challenges facing were related when designing a water project. It is always challenging to convince governments to allocate funds for an operation and maintenance component. Governments generally prefer using the funds exclusively for physical infrastructure, most of the times forgetting that they are investing in the service and not just simple assets. Also, for often neglected secondary cities, most water department staff have never been exposed to daily operation and preventive maintenance routines. Instead, they normally operate in a reactive mode by doing emergency repairs to maintain a minimum level of service. Next slide, please. So the process of setting up a 2-year operation and maintenance contract in Timor-Leste. So ADB past experience with sustainable water services in Timor-Leste was not positive. The first project in the sector achieved 24/7 water supply at the time of construction completion, but in a matter of months, service levels quickly deteriorate because of the absence of proper operation and maintenance. Based on this lesson learned, a 2-year operation and maintenance contract was proposed for the district capital's water supply project, mainly to the city of Manatuto. This was the first operation and maintenance contract in the water sector in Timor-Leste. However, reaching an agreement on the O&M contract was a long and difficult journey, and this values even more the work that PPFD and Stefan have been doing. And it took us almost 3 years to finalize the O&M bidding documents. Next slide, please. So basically, as was mentioned before, perform-based O&M contracts normally should run for at least 5 years to allow sufficient time for consolidation on non-revenue water programs, putting in place billing and collection systems, and operationalize preventive maintenance routines. However, in our project, due to limited funds and the government's desire to keep the control of the water supply assets, the agreed O&M contract duration was only 2 years. The government's main reason for agreeing with the O&M contract was that it provided a way for the water department staff to learn first-handed from experienced water supply operators, and this as one of the big selling points for this O&M contract. Also, the government also preferred an input-based rather than perform-based contract. This stemmed from the fear that if the O&M provider fees were completely tied to water service performance, the operator would rely only on its own staff rather than local staff to carry out critical tasks, thereby reducing opportunities for knowledge transfer for the local staff. Next slide, please. Ultimately, after this long process, ADB and the government compromised on a 2-year hybrid contract that included payment for inputs provided, plus some performance-linked payments. This arrangement reduced the perceived risk for the private sector, minimized the number of international experts required, and increased the scope of work for the local staff. Next slide, please. So, in terms of the pathway, since day one, the government and the operation and maintenance service provider ensured that the focus was placed on demand management rather than increase water supply to meet and control demand. And this included the installation and operationalization of bulk flow meters for the water sources and the reservoirs to understand where the largest losses in the system were, ensuring proper functioning of household water meters and immediately replacing faulty meters to allow charging for the water consumed, and putting in place a billing and collection system. The second goal was to institutionalize routine operation and maintenance by establishing routine tasks to be completed each day, each week, each month, and each year by the local staff with the supervision and support for the O&M service provider. Next slide, please. The O&M service provider also developed clear and concise operation and maintenance manuals and standard operation procedures. There was a strong focus was given to the implementation of the operation manuals and the standard operation procedures through both formal training in the classroom and informal on-the-job training. And this combination, it was presented as the most successful. For last, individual recognition as a high cultural value in Timor-Leste. and the O&M service provider gave a competency certificate at the end of the 2-year O&M contract to those staff who committed themselves and gave their time to perform the operation and maintenance activities, and this was really valued by the local staff. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, in terms of the results, we can say that by the end of this 2-year O&M contract, the government had built the foundation to continue the paradigm shift to a sustainable 24 water supply. It was possible to have better salaries for the staff that gained technical skills and understood the importance of providing regular operation and maintenance. It was also implemented simple payment options for the water service and streamlined procurement procedure for chemicals and spare parts were in place. In terms of the consumers in the Manatutu city, what we noticed was that they became conscious of the need to use the water efficiently, and that keeping the tap open will result in higher bills at the end of the month. It was also clear that the people in Manatutu got used to a reliable water supply, making a return to the old days of intermittent supply unacceptable for the vast majority of the population. And this is the way that now the operation and maintenance service provider is no longer in place, that the government staff will continue providing a good service. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. It is all from me. Over to you, Stefan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thiago. No, very interesting and grounded example on the challenge and the difficulty, but also a very strong interest of the operation and maintenance in challenging context as the one you are faced with. Thank you, Thiago. So in the same spirit, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Luo, who will kindly introduce himself. So we are moving to another context and in another level also in terms of size and coverage of area. So Mr. Luo, the floor is yours, please. Kindly introduce yourself and deliver your presentation. Thank you very much. I think you are muted. Mr. Luo, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hello, can you hear from me?
Yes, we hear you very well. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Just not because muted. No, okay.
Thank you. We hear you very well.
I'm Luo Xuegong from Beijing Enterprises Water Group Limited, called BEWG. Actually, I'm the GM of the international business of our group. Today, I'd like to to share with you some operation maintenance case and our suggestions. This case is in Southeast region. The existing plant, the capacity, the designed capacity is 228 MLD. It's built, 15 years ago. After completion, the operation maintenance under the client. 10 years passed, then the performance of the plant is lower than before. In 2016, the owner engaged BEWG to do the operation and the maintenance works, including some rehabilitation works to increase to improve the performance of the plant. And the contract period is 3 years. But as you know, because of the COVID-19 issue, this project completed in last year. Now hand over to the client already. This slide just show you the before we take over the plant, how it is the condition of the equipment at the plant. This slide also the storage tank, quite poor, and this unit we did upgrading work to to build a new 3 new tanks to replace the old one. This one is show the clarifier. We install the wheels to enhance the process function of the clarifier. This is the pump station for the production water. You also can see the how it is different. Okay, this is the case in the Southeast. Here I just show you, one case in Beijing to show you a plant on the professional operation maintenance. It's good, conditions, the plant condition. This case is also in China, in Guangxi province. This is water asset, operation maintenance project. For this kind of operation maintenance business, I think the NRW should be included in the performance. Actually, for this kind of business, BWG also did some project in Africa because it's in Africa, not in Asia. So I didn't share it with you here. Okay, this slide just show you what the professional contract can provide and what the employer will get from the professional service. The benefit for the client, the quality, the step operation, optimize and rehabilitation, the equipment, the maintenance, including the preventive maintenance if required. Training for the local team, also can provide the training for the client staff if required. Then the client will get a higher efficiency. Okay. So I think the operation and maintenance work and the maintenance service by professional contractor is a win-win situation. But based on our experience, there are still some problems between the contractor and the client. I think on the contract level. Always, during the operation maintenance period, always, has the problems on the process and the equipment dispute. If if the effluent is failed to meet the requirement, if any equipment break down, so always argue between the contract and the client. So I suggest to put clause in the contract to specify how to do a assessment when the contractor take over the plant and hand over the plant to the client. The equipment also. So for long-term contract, normally 2 or 3 years is okay. But if longer, if more than 5 years operation maintenance contract, they better to put clause to specify how to adjust the price to set a reasonable price adjustment mechanism is quite good for the contract and also I think for the client. Normally the client and the contractor will use KPI to adjust the workers' wage, but our experience is not enough because as normally the wage of the workers always going up, but the CPI sometimes going up, sometimes going down. The last one is the local team engagement. Normally when completes the contract, the local team shall be shifted to the client. I think it's good for the client to do a sustainable operation and maintenance. But there is some problems, because the contractor have to accumulate the offer of the workers and following the local law may give additional compensation. But if we have some particular clause in the contract to specify how to how to arrange the local team transfer, it's good for the contract and the client to avoid any additional cost. That's all today I would like to share with you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luo. Thank you very much for this very interesting aspect. I hope we'll have few questions on that. But of course, as you mentioned, this how to establish this win-win situation is key, and it's really the scope of what we are trying to develop in this contract template preparation is how to make sure that the contractor is on the winning stage, and also the executing agencies, the organization is also winning from this operation and maintenance template. So we can come back more in detail on that in the Q&A session. Thank you to the speaker. We are really very well on time for this for the Q&A. Maybe Lou, would you like to add to say something before we move to the Q&A? And I let you tell us if we have any questions or if you see a question in the chat box. Lou, are you with us?
I am, but just give me 1 second.
Sure, please.
Yeah, so super interesting discussion. I'm sorry, I have to, hang on. Try to make this okay. Can you see me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think from the procurement side, from the operational side, from the technical, as well as the kind of the expertise from the reporting side, intelligence or think tank side, I think we got a really, really good overview. And I don't know if I see a lot of things in the chat box. So but I wasn't able to see some of the questions. So
Yeah,
maybe
I can handle
you
this.
can
Yeah,
start.
sure.
Yeah,
okay.
please.
Thank you very much, Lou, and for your words. And so yes, so I see a few questions in the chat box. So I don't know if the people are allowed or not to speak or to read their questions. I'm not sure how it works, but if not, I will do it. So. First question is, what are the most common risks for O&M contracting, and how must operator account for risk in their pricing? Thank you for this question, Mafalda. So we'll start by this first question. So maybe I can handle this one. And I will also ask Thiago or Mr. Lou if they want to comment on that, or Srini maybe. So what we identified, of course, the first thing we identified in this O&M contract preparation are the risk, either from the organization or from the contractor side. So from what we get in the answers, so from the contractor side, among the key risks that are raised are first clear responsibility. Alors, maybe I would like to share a slide, if it's possible, to come back on my presentation. Maybe technical team, can you share my presentation again?
Yes, Stefan, it's loading. Hold on, please.
Yeah, sure. And if you can go at the end of the presentation.
Oops.
Yeah, no, take your time. We have asked during the, voilà, if you can go on the slide 11, please.
This one?
Voilà. Yes, the one before, please. Voilà, no, the one after, sorry, the 11.
This one?
The slide 11. Slide 11, please.
This
Sorry.
one.
Voilà. So just to show you, so this is really the result of the private sector survey that we developed. So you see that we had many respondents from the consultant and the contractor sectors. So we had about 26 consultants, 12 contractors, and we asked this question related to the risk. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Hi, Stefan. I'm moving the slides. Is this the one? Attractivity of O&M?
Yes, exactly. So you can see on this slide, or I don't know if the audience can see the slide, but you can see on this slide that among the key aspects, the risk sharing is one of the key aspects. So people really want to have a clear risk sharing responsibility. So one of the first things I see is that if there is no clear risk sharing responsibility, the O&M contract will not be a success. After securing payment is of course one of the key aspects. So making sure that the contractor are being paid on a regular basis is also very important. And interestingly, and that is also linked to the payment, is the definition of the KPI. So I may say that it was a key aspect of the working group, is how to define a reachable but also ambitious and sustainable KPI. So it's really what we try to focus on, defining reachable KPI, and it's also one of the main risks identified by the private sector, is making sure that the KPI defined in the O&M contract template are reachable. So we'll publish very soon a draft, and it will be public, it will be open for comments, and it will be accessible on the ADB website. So please contact me later in the coming weeks, but it will be published. And if you have any comments on this contract template, you are welcome. But the KPI again has been one of the key point of work to make sure that they are reachable, but also that they are leading to regular payments. That is also the bread and butter of the operation and maintenance. The key aspect is to have regular payments and to also avoid the sustainability risk. So I hope it answers the question. I would like to move to the second question. Does ADB prefer or would prefer to have water production and water distribution managed under the same contract or same private sector provider, rather than separately, as the service feedback indicated the private sector preference? So I would like maybe to ask Thiago or Mr. Luo, what do you think? Do you have any feedback on this aspect? And I may comment after, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. I think more important, it's, as you mentioned, to have a clear scope, definition of the clear scope of the contract. Of course, normally it will become much easier for the government to manage if they have only one contract. That normally the capacity it's already challenging. So if they have two contracts in terms of production and distribution to management, I think it's become too complex. So in terms of my experience, one contract would be the preferred solution from both sides, both from the private sector and also from the government side. But over to Mr. Luo.
Thank you, Thiago. Mr. Luo, you want to comment on that? Do you think we need two separate contracts for production and water distribution, or do you think it can be managed under the same contract?
Hello.
Yes, we hear you well.
You ask me or ask Mrs. Lu? Lu and Lu.
No. We ask you, Luo. Sorry, Luo.
Okay.
We ask you. Based on your experience in PRC. Thank you.
But I didn't get your point.
It's regarding this. Do you, based on your experience, do you have separate contract for production and distribution, or is it handled under the same contract template usually?
Yes, we have.
So under the same contract template.
Yeah. We have the contract template for single plant operation maintenance and also the operation maintenance service for plus consultant. For class water asset management. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if I may comment on that, in line with what Rita explained, yeah, we also prefer to have it under the same contract, but as we found in the survey, it's very important to have to have specific modules, very specific to water production and water distribution. So it might be under the same contract, but our recommendation and what we will do in the template is that we will develop very different and specific KPI for the water distribution and for
Yes, the contract for a single plant and for the water side is quite different.
Thank you, Mr. Luo. And so it's, as say Mr. Luo, it's quite different. So it's very important to have it covered under the different modules, but after it can be managed under the same contract to avoid to lose time to start in different contract. And also because sometimes importantly, KPI can be linked. For example, if you don't have, for example, sufficient water, it's very difficult to reach some performance KPI in the distribution. For example, to sell a certain amount of water, or to have a good quality of water, for example, in the distribution, if you don't have it in the production. Thank you very much for that. I propose to move to the next question. Would ADB be open to consider a water supply agreement with a private sector provider on a center per liter structure, which covered capex and recurrent O&M expenditure over a 10 years period, similar to how contract utilities contract electricity from private sector power providers? Alors, it may be an interesting. Thank you for the question first, Peter. And I think it may be considered also in our private sector part of ADB. You know, we have also a private sector which is developing PPP, for example, public-private partnership. So, for example, this kind of arrangement with a private sector provider, which are covering capex and recurrent O&M expenditure, could be covered under this kind of scheme. Regarding our contract template, the one we are developing now, we will include some capex, but it will be limited capex. So it will be limited capex because this O&M template is for a limited number of years. So, for example, from 3 to 5 years, and if we engage in a more substantial capex replacement, then it could be more adapted to develop a PPP scheme, or also to embark in a longer term traditional design, build and operate contract. So if you have any example of contract to share, Mr. Stevenson, in the electricity, we will be happy to study it and to consider it. It may be enrich also our work, because as I said, we are at a development stage. Any of the panelists has any comment on that? Maybe Srini or any other speaker would like to comment on that? Srini, please.
Yeah, just to pick you up on the point about electricity sector, it's a very common thing, of course, for electricity to be supplied on a per unit basis. So it's in fact purchased in the open market on that kind of basis. So there are any number of models available, including administered tariffs and also open market competition determined tariffs. Both are available. So we can easily find such examples everywhere. But in water, at least I have not heard of that because of the nature of the commodity. Yeah, a complete private sector solution where we just turn the tap on and get the water. So it sounds a bit unusual. Okay, I'll stop here.
Thank you, Srini. Yeah, it looks very usual, as you say, in the electricity sector. But no, we are happy to study more how to consider that in the coming template. Any comments from the speaker, or we can move to the next question if there is one. No more comments. Okay, so I don't see any more question in the chat box. So please, you are welcome to send your questions. I'm making sure that I have the updated link. Maybe we'll give you 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes to write down your question, please, in the chat box. Maybe Yuja, you could share about the article that was recently published by GWI on this O&M initiative. It is in the June edition, right?
Yes, it's in the July issue, so I can share that one. Yeah. So that's maybe basically talking about the overall status of the O&M contracting in the region, and then what's the challenges, and then what's the most common contract type in the region. Yeah. And it also talks about like the questions before, whether the clients prefer to separate the plant and then the distribution networks, or they prefer to combine them together. Yeah, it's usually depends also country by country, because usually those kind of distribution pipelines is more politically sensitive. And then so country like India, so they don't prefer to outsource two large contracts to one operator. So they also prefer to separate those contracts. And then I think the article also addresses the payment structure, the last question about whether it's to pay the bill based on the cubic meter of water sold, or it's based on the work is done. So I will show that one. Yeah.
Thank you. Please try to get this GWI sample if you want to have more detail on this work and the survey that was developed by that was presented by Yuja. All presentation I think will be made available, and we'll also share our ADB emails, so you can really send us an email. This is really the target of today's session, is to try to get input from the private sector, from organization on this O&M initiative. We know it's a little bit, it's yet a little bit quite, the scope is not so widely used in the MDBs. So there are some existing contract template from the World Bank or other organization, but more focus on non-revenue water, for example, from what we found, and not having this scope of work, this general scope of work. So we will be really happy to have your feedback on that, on how to make the most suitable and usable contract template. So as I said, it will be shared. The draft version will be shared in the coming weeks, and we are very happy to have your feedbacks on this version. Okay, thank you very much. So I don't see any other question. I propose to say except if any of the speaker wants to add something. If you nothing to add at this stage, so I will be happy to wrap up the session. So maybe I would like to make a quick summary for the audience. So first, thank you very much to the Asian Water Forum team to have allowed us to have this session today and to be present today with us as Gino, Jeff, Mafalda, Christian, and the whole team. It's really a privilege for us to be able to present today and to share this initiative. Thank you very much to Lou Shen, so who has opened this session and for our world. And you know there is a working group in ADB on this sustainability aspects that are becoming more and more important in the context. And we know that Water Sector Group is supporting us strongly on this initiative, with the Urban Sector Group also to finance and to lead this initiative, together with procurement and financial management of ADB. So we are really grateful to them. Thank you very much to the speakers. So as a reminder, we had Yuja today from GWI, who really gave a very interesting focus and perspective on the Asian market related to O&M. And as we shared, we really think that it will be a strong area of development in the coming months and years. So thank you very much, Yuja. We are very happy to cooperate with you on that. Thank you, Srini, for your perspective on the financial management. So it was really also to share that we are working more and more as one ADB, taking the competency and capacity from the different departments, because O&M is not only a contract template issue. It will help a lot, but we need also to enable stronger financial management. That is a key part of a successful O&M. If you want to have the contractor paid and the contractor to perform, financial management is key. And finally, thank you very much to the speakers who gave very interesting ground and field examples. So Thiago from Timor-Leste, we have two very interesting loan ongoing in Timor-Leste, which is a very interesting country where a lot of things are happening now in different areas. So thank you for your inputs. And we'll be happy to test this template also soon in Timor-Leste. And thank you very much to Mr. Luo, who gave us also a private sector perspective. So it's very important for ADB to be connected with the private sector, with what is also happening from different actors. So thank you very much for giving us also your interest and perspective in PRC. So it's very interesting, and I had the chance to do few missions in PRC. It's very interesting to see that also there are a lot of opportunities to improve operation and maintenance in PRC, especially related to water distribution also, because there are a lot of non-revenue water issues in PRC, and also, of course, related to wastewater treatment, because especially for energy recovery, nutrients recovery, energy consumption reduction, there are a lot of perspective, and we developed already a very interesting work. And my colleague Christian, who is connected here, can also give more detail on the action of ADB in the wastewater. There are a lot of action ongoing in the wastewater sector these days. So thank you very much again. I really hope I did not forget anyone. Thank you to the water sector team. And we are closing this session with 2 minutes of advance on the schedule. So congratulations to the speaker. And thank you very much to the audience. Unfortunately, in this online format, we were not able to see you and to exchange with you, but we really hope we can go back to a physical setting very soon. I give you back the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.